Hi everyone, welcome back to Design by Peck. Sorry for the delay in my next video. Life is busy, everything's busy. But I've got the order in from the depot. They've delivered the wood that I ordered for the built-ins that I'm going to build next. It's in my garage. I'm going to do a little unpacking, but prior to doing the built-ins, I'm going to do a little, I don't want to say a test project, but I'm going to build a kind of like a coat rack, hooks with some shells, kind of unit that's going to be very similar to the built-ins I'm going to make. A little bit shorter, but it's going to be very similar, and kind of like work out any kinks that I might run into. What I realized is, we had the design, Lori and I had the design, my fiance, on how to build the built-ins. But then there's just those small little details that kind of like you have to think about when you're designing or building one of these things. And that is, for example, we had the dimensions all set, we had the shelf heights all set, and then there's little things about, there's the overhang at the top of the built-ins. We wanted to have a little bit of a trim there that's maybe 1 inch by 1 inch or 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch. So I had to cut it so that it's about 1.5 inches longer than the actual built-ins. So that when you put in the trim, it kind of had like a little effect that it's kind of overhanging it. Things like that about do we want to have a kick on the bottom? What's the height of the kick if we do? What's the spacing between all the shelves? And so even though I had a general concept about the number of shelves and the dimensions and how I was going to cut it, a lot of the little details I kind of ran into when I was actually going to build it. What I did was I actually used Blender. So Blender is a free open source modeling program. A lot of designers use it for animation, so it's very powerful. But you can also use it for simpler things like what I'm doing. And I'm going to actually have a video on how I use Blender to design these built-ins and trying to get into some of the details. The only reason I recommend Blender is that it's free because it's open source. And so I use it. It's on the Mac, it's on Windows, it's on Linux. I think that a lot of people use other programs and they might be more user-friendly, but I didn't want to spend $200 a year licensing some of the most popular modeling program. I'm like, well, let's do it for free. The learning curve's harder, but guess what? Once I know it, I'll know it for life, and then I just can keep on using it. I'll learn more and more and more about how to use it. So I'm going to show the unpacking. I'm going to show the first shelving unit that I'm building that's going to go into the basement. I showed all the cuts. There is a bit of a gap in my taping because Lori primed it and painted it and kind of did put on some stick-on paper for like a design on the back of it. That I don't have on camera, but that's okay. I will show myself installing the shelves, installing the hooks, and getting that done, and that'll be my next video. After that, I'm going to do the built-ins, but of course, the built-ins are a big project. It's kind of daunting. We're going to see how it goes. Prior to even doing and installing the built-ins, I got to fix the drywall, and I kind of promised the drywall video that I would do when I did the faucet repair. They didn't show how I did to fix the drywall. Well, because this is on the back side, I'm going to show how I fix the drywall on the back side before I do the built-ins. All right, guys, thanks so much. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button, and I will see you at the other side. Bye. Hey, everybody. So here is me unpacking my pallet from Home Depot. I've got wood here, so I've got some melamine for concrete tables and a couple of fire pits that I'm going to make in a future video. I've also got some 3/4 inch plywood that I'm going to use for the table saw table that I plan to make again also in the future video. So we'll see how that one works out. I think I'm going to do that video after I do the built-ins. So I've got several projects planned with this wood. The first one, even though I talked about doing the built-ins, the first one I'm going to do kind of a trial one. I'm going to do a cabinet. I'm going to do a cabinet that's the equivalent of 1/2 the width of one of the built-ins. Just kind of place it in there, make sure it looks good. See where the cutouts need to happen for the outlets. It's going to be a little bit shorter than the built-ins. And so that's going to be the video that you're going to be watching right now. This is going to be possibly part one. I don't know if we're going to do a part two and all at once, but I might just do a part one then a part two later when I finish the built-ins. But this is a lot of wood, and oh my god, it was heavy. And so if you notice, like I've got I've I'm going to be cutting this wood on the ground of my garage, or sometimes on the driveway, and that's because I do not have a proper table saw table to kind of glide the plywood and cut it with my table saw. So I'm going to be using a circular saw. You're going to see here I've got it on some 2x4s to kind of elevate it off the ground. I'm measuring it and remeasuring it and remeasuring it. I've got a laser on the end of that circular saw, and so I do kind of see. I know it's. Oh, here we go. So I do have a laser at the end of that circular saw that I can kind of see where the blade's going to happen. So I'm measuring, remeasuring it, and there we go. I'm doing my first cut. That looks like it's going to be the back panel of the cabinet. And then I'm going to do the two side ones. So here it looks like the first one. And I'm sure there's a better way. So what I'm doing here is I'm measuring the distance, from the edge to get it consistent at the top and the bottom of that panel. And then I'm using one of my other pieces of plywood as my straight edge to use my circular saw. So to me, that's like the best way I thought of to actually go do and make a straight line all the way across. I would have loved to have used a table saw. And you know what? To be honest, I've used the table saw a bunch on on smaller pieces. I've never used it on a really big piece. I've always claimed the issue with that is that it's I don't have a table to go with the table saw, so I don't have anything to kind of lay these big pieces of 4x8 plywoods on. Maybe a table saw is too, like a 4x8 piece of plywood is too big for a table saw. I don't know. I'll figure that out once I build the table saw table. But for right now, as you can see, I'm building it on the floor of my garage. And later on, you're going to see I'm going to be building the actual cabinet out onto the driveway. This is in October. I'm in Michigan. We've had a cold month. This happened to be a fantastically warm day. So I was able to wear shorts and a t-shirt. I was probably sweating a little bit. Here's my table saw. I've got a hand-me-down table saw table from my fiance's dad. It's, as you can see, it's not very big. It just holds the table saw itself. But I'd use that to cut the top piece and the bottom piece of the cabinet. So here I am. I am now. So these cuts, the original cuts were for just the width of the panel. So now I'm going to cut it to length. I think I did 84.5 inches. I believe is the height of this cabinet. One of the things that I've maybe it's obvious to other people, but not to me, is that it's important to think about how you're going to connect the edges. I've heard that if you're a true carpenter, you create these kind of intertwined edges. They kind of lock into each other. I am not that, and I am not going to do that. I'm going to use this using screws. I thought I was going to use Clegg screws for this. I have a little Clegg kit, one of the cheaper ones. But then I realized, so this is what I'm talking about, how you design it's important. The side panels were flush with the back of the edge, and the only way you can use the Cleggs then is to drill through the back panel of the cabinet into the side panel. And then I thought, oh, well, that's not going to be great. I'm going to see all these ugly big holes in the back panel of my cabinet. I know I'm going to be able to, I'll probably fill it, I will putty it, I will prime it and paint it, so you might not be able to see it at all. But I thought, well, let's just kind of use my drill and just drill it in from the sides and see how it happens. And I realized that this is not the best way to do it. So I'm doing a lot of measuring here, and there's the top panel. You see, I elevated it off the ground to give me kind of my my drill a little bit of room so I can go in straight from the edge. And so when I do it, and it actually worked out fine here. You see I'm doing making sure it's 90 degrees. That little piece of wood on the one side and the other side, or on the one side, that is a 1/2 inch piece of wood, and each panel on each side of this cabinet is 1/2 inches. So I just wanted to make sure I perfectly centered as best as I could. I got that top piece done. You can see it's longer than the side panels because it's going to have a purpose. I purposely overhanged it over top of the side panels. So I'm now drilling the side panels, and you probably can't tell, but there's two things going on here. One is it's really hard, at least for me, and I know what I know. I'm good, but I'm not great. It's hard to exactly, for me, precisely get the right depth for that 1/2 inch screw. So there's a little bit of a bump in the back panel when I drill through it. But then on top of that, the other issue is this plywood's not perfectly flat. So I kind of had to like drill it on one end and kind of push it flat. I was drilling it just to make it flat again. And so I don't know if there's a way to flatten the plywood. I don't think there is. And if there is, I felt like what I did was good enough to make it straight. And so here I am. This is the second side piece. I'm getting faster at it, I think, and I know for next time when I do the built-in, so I'm glad I did kind of a practice run here, I am going to have the side pieces sit on top of the back panel, and by doing that, I can use the cleg piece and drill from the outer surface of the side panel into the back panel to lock it together, and it won't be visible, so I will not have to putty it. I won't have to put in a filler. I won't have to prime it or anything like that. It's going to be some holes in that side panel that will not be visible by anyone once it's installed. So here I am. I'm putting in the bottom piece now, trying to make sure. Because I have a small kick, I had to go measure it up from the bottom, and I'm drilling it in with a one and a half inch kick. I know that's not just because it looked good, and it was just my trial run. It was a shelving unit that's going to go in the basement. It's going to be have a couple shelves and a couple hooks, and I'm going to install the shelving units themselves in the next video. Right now, I'm just doing the box and trying to make sure that I got it kind of right. I'm going to put this in place in the room where the built-ins are going to go, just to make sure that it looks the way it's supposed to look. I know it's not the right height, but it's half of the exact width of the built-ins. So I noticed when I stood this up, there's a little bit of gap that you can see between the side panel and the back panel. So I just added a couple extra screws to close up the gap in a couple of spots. I don't think I closed up all of them, but I closed up the most egregious ones just to make it look a little bit better. But for me, this was a lesson learned for when I prepared to do the built-ins, which I want to kind of have as perfect as I can make it. So I just added a few extra screws before I bring it into the office / blue room that's going to be where the built-ins are going to go, just to kind of set it up to see if it kind of looks kind of right. Okay, the moment of truth. Let's see how this works. Let's see how well I do it. I'm not taking the trim off yet. Just kind of placing it in there. Not too bad. Let's take these off the wall. I run into several issues doing this, and I know I still have to fix the drywall right here. I'll show you. I'll probably have that project out before I load this one, just because that'll be an easy one to do. So my first try at built-ins. I think some people are going to say, well, built-ins this isn't really built-in, it's shelving attached, whatever. I'm calling it built-ins. I'm attaching it to the wall. I'm going to leave the drywall on. I don't want to rip the drywall off for this. And I know some of you may have noticed, got a couple outlets there, so I'm going to mark the back, cut the openings to the outlets, and then attach it on. And I'm going to have 1, 2, then that big gap one here, with the desk going to be right there. And then over here, it's going to be 1, 2 again. But because I do not want to have to take the built-ins out if there's any other repair, on the faucet repair I did in an earlier video, I'm going to create an access panel right here, cut out the back of the built-in, and so if I ever have to get back here again, I will have access from the back. And then I'll put 2 here. I know there's an outlet there also, so I'm going to make a cutout for that outlet as well. So here, let me just grab this for a second. The things I have to like look out for, there's a vent right there, so this is going to, the top of this is going to be just shy of that vent. We're going to paint the wall so that all the walls are going to be painted. If you don't, it's too dark for a room. But what we're going to do is I'm just right now building these, kind of placing them in there to see how it looks. Paint the back wall there, paint the middle here, and then worry about the rest of the walls later. So my goal is to finish this in the next week. I know that's like, well, why would it take a week to do? Well, it's my first built-in I remember doing, and plus, I got a day job and stuff like that. I have to remove the molding on the bottom here and find the studs and all that stuff. So, plus I'm actually a little worried here. I went with 1/2-inch thick wood just for lightness, because I know I probably would have done normally 3/4-inch wood, but the 3/4-inch wood was just too heavy. So I went with 1/2-inch, which is fine. But what I found is I run into a couple issues drilling here. You can see it kind of bulges out. Oh, look at the light in there. Bulges out right there. You can see a little bit. Bulges out there a tiny bit. I just try to make sure that there's no bulging on the inside, but even with all that, I ran into, oops, here we go. Right here, the screw didn't quite line up. I had to redo it a couple times, so I'm gonna have to like shave that down, putty it or something like that to make it flat again. And plus, you can see right there, it's not quite square. Right there, so there's a tiny little bit of a gap. What I did is when I installed the bottom panel, I've got a small kick plate or a kick right there. Not big enough that you probably normally would have, but I just thought it aesthetically would look okay. I'm gonna have to putty that a little bit to close that gap. I know there's a gap right there. I'm hoping I just can add another screw to the side to kind of push that in. Yeah, I think I can right there. And then otherwise, I think it's good. I think it's pretty straight and level and square. Of course, it's all going to be contingent on what the wall is like. I think the wall's not quite square, because when we go over here, actually, I measured the distance from this wall frame to here, and then the wall frame or the door frame from there to there, and there's at least a 1/2-inch difference between the two. So either the wall's off or the frame's off. I don't know which, and so I'm already thinking, well, that might look ugly if I have a small gap here and a larger gap there. So I might try to get fancy and have this edge flare out a tiny bit so that the side of this will always have an even gap all the way down this. I mean, that's gonna be hard to do, but that's what I would like to do. Hey everyone, thanks for watching for part 1 of my cabinet, which was kind of my trial run for the built-ins. I'm gonna do part 2, which will be a lot, probably shorter, at least half as short, maybe even more, where I kind of finish putting in a couple more shelves, some hooks, and to show the final placement of the cabinets. But I did this on purpose because it was my first attempt at making a built-in, and I made the dimensions almost the exact same as the built-ins. It half as wide as the built-ins, but you know, it's the depth from the wall and how it's going to be placed up is going to be very similar. So look for part 2 of this video where I finish off this cabinet. Then after that, I think what I'm going to do is show the drywall repair, and then after that, I'm going to do the built-ins, and then hopefully that will be done in the next week, maybe 2, depends how life treats me in the next couple weeks with how much work I have. Thanksgiving's coming up for me, so I'll be busy doing that. We're being COVID safe. We're not having anybody over, but we are still going to have our turkey dinner with the family, like with my kids, my fiance's kid, and her sister. So I will be busy with that, but I'm still going to try and get it done. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching Design by Peck, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.